Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, I want to break down Cold Snap. Cold Snap is a ranged Nightblade Gank build designed to move really fast and hit incredibly hard, giving very little to no counterplay. It is insanely fun to play, and there is a gameplay guide on the channel that shows you how to pilot it. But in this one, I'm going to break down the gear, the skills, everything you need to know so you can make this yourself. And just a heads up, this is a 2-bar version, so you do need to obviously have, As always, if you like my videos, and likes, comments, shares and subscribes are greatly appreciated. And if you want to support myself, then there is a Patreon and a YouTube where you can get access to exclusive content, early access to videos and much more. There's details down below. For the build, however, you want to be a Khajiit or a Dark Elf. A Khajiit will give you access to the decreased detection radius from feline ambush, as well as more crit damage, and you get more max resource and sustain. If you're a Dark Elf, you have more consistent damage. A Khajiit is slightly more peak damage if you crit. Both are really good options. Me personally, if I was going to make a brand new character today, I'd go for Khajiit, because you have the option of a range build should you wish. Melee build should you wish, rather than being range. For the attributes, I would recommend having a bit of a split. You can go 16 Magicka, 32 health and 16 stamina, or you can go all into Magicka to really maximise that damage. As for our stats and looking at the damage on the build, you will see that we have 5,600 spell damage, 13,000, almost 14,000 penetration. We do have major breach on this build, and we have access to minor breach, so that's another 9,000 on top. What this means is we hit really hard, and those sustains go up by another 1,300, so we have lots and lots of sustain. As with the Munderstone, I am using the Lover Munders. This gives us more penetration, so we hit even harder still. The Shadow is a good option, but the Lover is more consistent, so I'd recommend this personally. If you are then going to go into if you're going to go into Cyrodiil, for the champion points we want to use Master at Arms, Fighting Finesse, Deadly Aim and Wrathful Strikes. If you attack from behind, Backstabber is better, but you do need to be behind them. As such, I'd recommend Wrathful Strikes. For the red ones, we are going to be using Pain's Refuge for defense, Relentless for more defense, Bastion to attack shielded people and do a bit more damage, and Celerity for more speed. With some of the skills we use, this is more damage, so speed equals damage on this build. Sounds weird, but it works. You can change Bastion if you don't attack shielded targets to Sustain by Suffering, Expert Evasion or Slippery. I would, however, avoid Sustain by Suffering because we do lose 30% of this resource, so it is there, yeah. As with the green ones, you want Sustain in Shadows. This is cheaper Sneak, and Steed's Blessing for more speed. For the skills are very interesting on this build, so pay close attention, and if you get any questions, let me in the comments down below. It is somewhat unusual, okay? To help people just see what the damage is like, I am going to buff up, so you can then see the damage. We have Bloody Soul. This is a stamina skill. It does 11,500 damage with an 18,000 dot. Because it's every 10 seconds and it ticks straight away, it's an extra 1,800 to this initial hit, which means it hits very hard. It also hits a major breach, so this is really good. You can change this to be frost damage, bleed damage, poison damage, disease, whatever. I would personally keep bleed or physical, as that is the best for this skill, because if they proc, you get even more damage than you do normally. For the other skills, we are using False Pulse. This is a 15,000 just hit. It hits really hard. We have Sustaining attacks, which you can change if you wish, and use Relentless Focus. I personally would do this, but if you don't want to use this skill and you want to have more sustain, Sustaining attacks is a really good way, and it also gives you some passive healing. So it is a nice reset really fast option. The Relentless Focus is just hit somebody incredibly hard, and again use the stamina morph because it hits harder and you get more weapon damage, which means you can actually charge this up and have more damage, which makes these skills hit harder. We then use Shadowy Disguise. This just makes you invisible. It's really good. We then have another scribe skill, Shocking Barrier. This is amazing. It gives you a 6% damage to direct attack, so this means everything hits harder. It does reduce our recovery by 33%, but I have got a way around that, so just trust the process. It gives us 450 weapon and spell damage if we increase our movement speed loads, and it gives us minor courage. This basically is a 5-piece damage set in one skill. The downside is you have to double bar it, and on top of that, it does mess your regens up, so you do need to build around that too. With that said though, you're probably thinking, like, how much of a difference does it actually make? So, our spell damage is 5,600. I'm going to turn it off, and we'll do exactly the same thing. Our spell damage is 4,700. Put it on, 5,600. This skill alone adds almost 900 weapon and spell damage. It is insanely good because of how fast we've got our character, which means when we're actually in sneak, this is my sneak speed. So we move really fast and we get loads and loads of damage out of that skill. It is incredibly good. It's just a bit of a pig to farm the scripts, and you have to build around the sustain. For the ultimate, we have in-cap. This is a really good just get away from me button. If people come near you, you can do an in-cap into False Pulse, and again we'll buff up so you can see the damage on False Pulse. This time without the contingency, it's almost 3k each, so that's 9,000 plus 17 there, so it's like 27,000 altogether. It hits really, really hard. If you do an in-cap into a False Pulse combo or an in-cap into a Bloody Soul combo, you're more likely they're not going to kill somebody. And because we don't use Relentless Focus too often, you can also do in-cap into Relentless Focus as a just get away from me combo. So all in all, you get loads and loads and loads of damage out of this. On the back bar, we have the banner again. So we double bar this so it doesn't keep turning off. We use Concealed Weapon. This is a movement speed boost. And as we saw, more speed, more damage, more speed, more damage. Really, really good here. And it's just passive. So really nice skill. We then have another scribe skill, which is our burst heal. This will heal us. It also gives our attacks a bonus 2,000 damage, so when we try to gank people, it's more damage, and it gives us minor resolve, gives us armor as well. So when we actually use this, and we use all our skills, we end up getting both the armor buffs on, which is really nice. So you've got 20,000 armor, so it's not loads, but it's helpful. The only issue with this is that when you cast it, it doesn't heal you straight away. So you have to roll dodge to get it to heal you, or cast it and then do another skill like Cloak. So I would say that this skill is a very good skill, but the downside is that it has a high skill ceiling. If you find that you just need healing instantly, because you find doing the skill then the roll dodge straight away, I would recommend using Shrewd Offering as an alternative heal, or you could even use Vigor from the Assault line, which is also really good. Additionally, we also have access to Rally, which is another heal, and because we pre-buff with Channel Deceleration, then Rally, by the time we get into combat, Rally is charged quite a bit, that if things go wrong, we can just push Rally and get a big heal out of it still. So that is also an option for extra healing power. It does give us more sustain and it gives us our damage buffs. We are using Channel Deceleration on this build. You're probably going, why am I not using Race Against Time? Simply put, when I use Channel Deceleration, we get a huge amount of movement speed for 11 seconds, which means we have more time to line the combo up and to find somebody. Whereas if you're using Race Against Time, you have to constantly swap bars, you lose some of the speed, you lose some of the damage. So I personally found this is easy to actually attack people with, and all you do is Channel Deceleration, Rally, Contingency, and then as you move around, you're ready to attack somebody. So it's a really good way, and you've got about a 10-second window to just look for somebody before you just repeat the combo again. And because of how fast you move, you can literally just cloak and then go for the combo. For the ultimate on the back bar, I use Temporal Guard for minor protection, but this could be something like Soul Tether as a kind of just get away from me button, if you wish. If you want to change your front bar ultimate and you do run Relentless Focus, you can actually use Meteor, but I don't find that as useful. I personally prefer the in-cap. I'm now going to just touch really quickly upon the Vampirism. So you'll see that this build is a vampire, and we are a vampire. I would recommend being stage 3. I always get asked, why stage 3? The Undeath passive, yes, it's been nerfed, but you'll see it's up to 15% just damage reduction. What that means is when we're half health, we're taking like 7% less damage, which is still really, really good. And yes, our skills cost a little bit extra, but in all honesty, this passive is still worth it, especially on Nightblade, because you're not out in combat often to be hit. So when you are hit, you want to reduce the damage, and it gives you a bit more breathing room. The sustain that you lose isn't massive either, so I'd still recommend Undeath. I'm going to go through the gear and stuff, but if you like what I do with the builds and the channel, do comment, let me know below. And if you want to stay up to date with this build and just the content generally, do subscribe. When I look on the YouTube data, I see loads of people who watch these videos are still not subscribed, and I don't understand why. With that said, I also want to say a massive thank you to all of the members and patrons who do support the content. If you want to do so and get early access and exclusives, there's stuff down below. As with the sets, we are using Winterborn. Winterborn is a really good set. I want to buff up and show you the damage on this. I'm not going to use Contingency because that does increase the Winterborn by 2000 and it gives you a false impression. But Winterborn, as you can see, has a 7200 proc. It procs really easily. And it procs easily because we use False Pulse. It's an instant proc. So what that means is that when we use False Pulse, Winterborn pops straight away. And because of that, it means we can get some really nice burst combos out of this. You might also notice that this is an Inferno staff. And I need to touch upon this because it's a bit weird with how you choose it. You want to use Sharpened, and the glyphs you use could be whatever you like. Decrease health is the best, in my opinion. But if you're using something else, Poison's quite good generally because it acts as a pseudo execute. I would personally go with Decrease Health or Poison, or just use double dot poisons. Now, the one thing to note though, that if we use an Inferno staff, down in the Ancient Knowledge passive, Infernos increases our damage over time and status effects by 12%. What that means is it doesn't buff our skills, which is quite a bit of lost damage. The difference is, however, that if we heavy attack from Sneak, we can heavy attack and then do our skills and get a bonus heavy attack into the build. On top of that, the heavy attack also procs Tri-Focus. When I buff up the Tri-Focus, has a tooltip of 19,000. So that's like an extra 1,000 damage almost on the combo, just from this alone. So you get 1,000 from this Tri-Focus, you get the heavy attack. So I find that this is typically more damage than a lightning staff. That said, when you are in invisibility, if you heavy attack, you get pulled out of invisibility. See, it's turned off. So the issue that you have with that is that you can't heavy attack and cloak, which means you can't force the guaranteed crit on any of your skills. So there is trade-offs. As such, you may want to consider using a lightning staff. And if you do this, it is easier to play. You do your combo, and you just cloak, and then do your skills. And you'll see that was like 58k DPS there. I will switch to the Inferno and do the reverse. And that was in 1 second. Yes, it's a trial dummy, but it gives you like just a rough metric to kind of like compare the differences. So I'm doing the combo. And you'll see that was 72. So you get slightly more damage with the heavy attack. Obviously, crits and stuff will vary this a little bit, but it's not a huge amount of bonus damage. So just do factor that in PvP, if you want an easier time, just use the lightning staff. And literally, when you do your combo, we'll buff up again and do it. You can cloak, cast a skill, then light attack, force pulse. And you'll see that was 69k, so it's very similar damage. It's not, you know, there's not a huge amount of difference in there. The only advantage is that if you do use the Inferno, you get that extra dot, which means if they do live, you got a better chance of killing them. So those are the trade-offs. The other thing to note with the staff is you could use a ice staff. The advantage of an ice staff is that your heavy attack will proc Winterborn straight away. So you can do your heavy attack, and Winterborn's proc instantly. But the issue is, though, that you obviously run into the fact that you don't get that free dot, and then your block does cost magicka, and it can cause issues there. So, you know, the staffs are like up to you with which type you pick. I personally would use Inferno or Lightning, but if you don't get these drop, use Ice. In the gameplay, you'll see me using Ice because these haven't dropped yet, and I farmed it for like hours and hours and hours. Like, I'm tired of farming it, so I've stuck with Ice in the gameplay, but these are actually better. For the rest of the sets, we then have the Frenzy Momentum 2H. What this does is, as we use stamina skills, we generate stacks, we get bonus damage. It's a free proc. You might go, but Dan, this is on the back bar. When we're on the back bar, because our main spam rule is actually a stamina skill, we can charge it still. So you'll see that it is charging down here. And not only does it charge there, it also gives us bonus damage. So I'm going to put on all the buffs so you can see. We have 6,500 spell damage and weapon damage. So it is a really, really good thing to run. It's loads of bonus damage if you can use this. It doesn't need to be perfected. I would use powered because it increases our healing. And you can use any glyph you want, in all honesty, or any poison. It doesn't need to be perfected, as I said, it can just be normal. For the helmet, we're using One Piece Krog, Divines. This is a medium armor piece. We then have Darlock Bray as the second set. Whilst you are crouching and not bracing, you restore 670 magicka, stamina, and health. What that means is, as we move around, our stamina doesn't drop. So our stamina recovery is actually going to go down, but as we move, it doesn't drop, which is really, really good. So we can just sneak around forever. Whereas what should happen is when you're sneaking, your stamina gets reset to 0. And this just avoids that, which means when you go into the fight, you actually have resources to start with, which is really, really helpful. On top of that, yes, the banner skill reduces our recovery by 33%. Because this is not technically recovery on the stat page, it doesn't get reduced by that skill, which means this has the full sustain. And recovery is every 2 seconds, so you have to double this number, which means this is 1300 sustain. This is really good. When we add that to our actual existing sustain, you'll see that our sustain is 1200 magicka plus 1300. It's 2500 magicka recovery when we're sneaking. It is really, really good with the banner on. And the stamina sustain is really good as well. So what this just means is that we actually have incredible sustain levels than you'd realise. And because it fixes the issue with this, we can get the free damage from this, which is like 900 damage that I showed already. It's almost 1,000 with the other buffs included, which is this is a 5-piece damage set. So this combo here gives you loads of bonus damage, and it gives you loads of sustain, which means you're just better at ganking overall. We then round this off with Winterborn Jewelry, all infused, and I use Wild Hunt. Wild Hunt gives us more speed. The faster we are, the more damage we get out of this. When you're in combat, you get 15% speed. If you have a look at this skill, you'll notice that it's 6 damage for every 1%. So that's 90 damage there. If I compare this to, say, Marken, Marken's only 200 damage, so it's not that much less damage. But this gives you much more speed, which is more survivability. I prefer this because it's easy to get around. And when you're not in combat, you move stupidly quick to reposition. So I personally think that, you know, Wild Hunt is the better option on this build for this. And then the waist is a Winterborn Sash just to maximize resistances. I know people ask, Dan, what about a superstar? Here is the superstar. It has described skills here. There's 3 of them on this build, so there's loads here. It is a fun build. It's a little bit complicated to set up, but it hits incredibly hard. There is a video on the channel with some gameplay. Just note that the gameplay is a slightly older version, but it works incredibly well, and this is just fully optimized. So if you have the resources to make this, it's going to be better than what you see. But I'm going to kind of call it here. If you get any questions about the build itself, let me know in the comments or join my Discord. And if you haven't done so, do subscribe so you stay up to date with the channel. I've got more content on the way, and I'd love for you guys to see it. And I'm just going to say a massive thank you to all of the Patreon and YouTube members who do support. They get early access, exclusive content and more. If you want to support the channel, there's details below. But as always, I'll catch you in the next video or stream. Take care, thanks for watching, and bye!